Niner gang, what's good? You're watching the 49ers Report by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Jay Senior. Coming your way on today's show, we're going to take a look at 5 superstar trade candidates who the Niners can go out and make a splash for in this NFL offseason. And all of these players have been mentioned somewhat in NFL rumors discussion. So we start off this list by taking a look at Brandin Cooks. There are reports out there that the Houston Texans are fielding calls for Brandin Cooks, and they want a second-round pick back for Brandin Cooks. And I would like him in this offense. He can play in the slot, he can play outside, and the level of production throughout his career, it's been tremendous. 2014, 53 catches, 550 yards, and 3 touchdowns. 2015 with the New Orleans Saints, 84 catches, 1,100 yards, and 9 touchdowns. 2016, he put up big numbers once again. Then he goes to the New England Patriots, and what do you know? He was really good that year, putting forward great levels of production, 65 catches, 1,000 yards. So already, you see the numbers that he's been able to put forward. 2018, another 1,000-plus yard season. He goes to the Rams as he's really popped around with a couple of teams throughout his NFL career so far. He was pretty good, 42 catches, 583 yards in an injury-shortened season. In 2020 with the Houston Texans, once again, he's able to surpass that 1,000-yard mark and reel in 6 touchdowns. I mean, since coming into the league out of Oklahoma State, Brandin Cooks has been a very, very good player. Now, we get to those reports surfacing about Brandin Cooks. These are the recent developments with Brandin Cooks, and really, this has made some headway this week. The Houston Texans have been receiving calls from a lot of teams in the NFL about the availability for Brandin Cooks. At the NFL trade deadline last year, he had voiced his frustration on social media with him not being sent somewhere else to join a team that is ready to compete for a Super Bowl and the NFL playoffs. And I'm sure at this point of his career and him dealing with some of the concussion issues that he's dealt with throughout his NFL career, he wants to go to a team that's ready to compete in the NFL playoffs and compete for a Super Bowl. As for the asking price, according to reports from some reporters in the know, the Houston Texans want a second-round pick in exchange for one of the most productive wide receivers that we've seen in recent memory in Brandin Cooks. So with that, I segue to this question for the audience, and I want you to treat the comment section like a sports talk radio call-in line. Would you trade the lone Niners second-round pick at 61 for Brandin Cooks? Be John Lynch. I want you to get into the shoes of the 49ers general manager and let me know in the comment section. Type T for trade, type K for keep, sound off, and let me know in the comment section. Next superstar trade candidate, we're talking about A.J. Brown. Now him, like Deebo Samuel, looking to secure the bag, going into the final year of that rookie contract, second-round pick, same year as Deebo Samuel, and his production, like Brandin Cooks since coming into the league, really has been tremendous. Now he's a different player than Brandin Cooks. Brandin Cooks can be used more as a Swiss Army knife, and you can line him up anywhere on the field. And A.J. Brown, more of a physically imposing wide receiver, like a DK Metcalf, like a Terrell Owens back in the day. In 2021, he was really good. 63 grabs, 869 yards, average yards per catch at 14, and 5 touchdowns. There are reports out there that the Tennessee Titans want to lock down A.J. Brown for a contract that will make him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the National Football League. Him and Deebo Samuel, in my opinion, my estimation, they're both going to land close to record-setting contracts. So, if the Niners wanted to trade for A.J. Brown, could they also keep and pay Deebo Samuel? That's a conversation that this front office would have to have, and I'm not sure if you're the Niners, you would want to allocate all of that money to make 2 guys, 2 of the 5 highest-paid wide receivers in the NFL, in A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel. I think you'd have to keep one, so who would you rather keep? That's a conversation that this front office would have to have. But I do want to ask you this question. A.J. Brown, he put up monster numbers at Ole Miss. He comes into the league with the Tennessee Titans, and he's been dominant as a wide receiver for Tennessee. Where do you think he ranks among some of the top wide receivers in the NFL? Fill in the blank for me, and you let me know. Also, make sure you subscribe to our main Chat Sports YouTube channel because we'll be going live for all 7 rounds, every single selection, all 3 days of the 2022 NFL Draft on our main Chat Sports YouTube channel, which is quickly approaching 300,000 subscribers. We'll be live on YouTube. We'll also be live on Rumble. And if you want exclusive 49ers content, make sure you subscribe and follow us on the Rumble app. Free and uncensored content over there, so I can curse whenever I want to. Also, on Rumble, you can find sports, news, politics, tech, and business content. And we continue to grow here at Chat Sports and on the 49ers Report, and put our content to the platforms that you as the viewers use. So give us a follow, rumble.com/49erstv. And if you're watching us during our live show on Tuesday, we'll be going live exclusively on Rumble for a Rumble-only segment after our live show is up. So we talked about 2 wide receivers who the Niners can go out and trade for. How about offensive line? Specifically offensive tackle. Now, Mike McGlinchey is a right tackle, and he's coming off a torn quad. His health status somewhat up in the air. Now, him and Javon Kinlaw have been working out at the practice facility in Santa Clara. But the Niners need help along that offensive line. And Andre Dillard of the Philadelphia Eagles, a former first-round pick out of Washington State, has been unseated by Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. Currently, he is not a starting tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, and he has been talked about as being a prime NFL trade candidate ever since really the NFL trade deadline last year. Now, he was able to get some spot starts last year because of injuries to Mailata as well as Lane Johnson. He played 8 games, only gave up 1 sack, hasn't necessarily lived up to the expectations of being that former first-round pick out of Washington State for Philadelphia, but he has a lot of ability, and he's really developed the last couple of years. Early on, it looked as though he was going to be a bust, and he was a little bit weak in between the ears. But with Jeff Stoutland, one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL, he's been able to right the ship, he's been able to develop, he's been able to work on his mental stability and mental toughness, and in turn, he's become a pretty good player. And because of that, he's turned into one of the more premier trade targets in the National Football League. I like the ability of Andre Dillard. Now, at Washington State and with the Philadelphia Eagles, he's played a lot of left tackle. He has voiced his displeasure with playing right tackle. But my message for Andre Dillard, if Mike McGlinchey can't stay healthy, Andre, do you want to get paid? 1? Do you want to start games? Because you're not starting games with the Philadelphia Eagles. If that's the case, come to San Francisco. You can be the future protector for Trey Lance. Next superstar trade candidate to get to, Marshon Lattimore of the New Orleans Saints. Now, the New Orleans Saints over the last couple of years have proven that the NFL salary cap is kind of a myth. They had to restructure his contract, which we'll break down here in a few moments, to make room on the roster to make some signings for some other players. But in Marshon Lattimore, we're talking about one of the best defensive players in the NFL and one of the best cornerbacks out there. And in 2021, he was awesome. 55 tackles, 3 interceptions, 9 pass breakups, which is an extraordinary number. Apologies for that mistake there on the graphic. 9 pass breakups. That's really, really excellent levels of production for Marshon Lattimore, and 1 fumble forced. And there have been some trade rumors kind of surrounding Marshon Lattimore for a long time because New Orleans might look to deal him to make room on that salary cap, to make some other additions to that roster. And Marshon Lattimore has been a fantastic player for a long time. Multi-time Pro Bowler, was the Defensive Rookie of the Year back when he was taken out of Ohio State. And he would be awesome on this 49ers defense, especially coupled with the fact that the Niners defensive line is really good. That would allow him to feast in that secondary. Now, he's making a lot of money. Marcus Peters not making as much money as a player like Marshon Lattimore. And that's another player who we want to break down on this list. And we'll do that real quick. But first, let's get to Marshon Lattimore's contract. Now, the Saints able to restructure that, so he only has a base salary in 2022 of $1 million. But the next couple of years, he's being paid as one of the best cornerbacks in the sport. But you pair him up with Charvarius Ward, and the thought of that is pretty tantalizing. 2023, base salary of $14.5 million. 2024, $15 million. 2025, it goes up to 16 even, and then in 2026, final year of his deal, $16.5 million. So you'd have to pay him if you wanted to bring in Marshon Lattimore via trade, but he would make this defense so much better than it already is, and from week 10 on, they're one of the best defenses in the NFL. Last trade target to get to, it's Marcus Peters. He's coming off a torn ACL, so his production in 2021, there wasn't any, right? Because he suffered that torn ACL in an injury-plagued season for the Baltimore Ravens. But in 2020, he was pretty good. And for a long time, he's been known as a gambler. Niners fans know him really well because he played formerly for the Los Angeles Rams before going to the Baltimore Ravens. And of course, you have to deal with some extra baggage because Marcus Peters ain't afraid to let his swagger be known on the football field, and he ain't afraid to let his feelings be known either. But in 2020, 4 picks, 9 pass breakups, so basically even production with Marshon Lattimore this past year. 4 forced fumbles and 1 sack. Primarily, you put him on an island and he'll be able to succeed there. And he does gamble at times, but those gambles sometimes end up working out really well for San Francisco. So the 5 big-name superstar trade targets for San Francisco, on top of the list that we broke down last week, these players, they're involved in NFL trade rumors discussions. Brandin Cooks, A.J. Brown, Andre Dillard, Marshon Lattimore, as well as Marcus Peters. Now, in the comment section, you can name a player that you want the Niners to trade for, including the list that we just talked about and dissected, or another player out there, in addition to the list that we put forward on the channel last week. You let me know in the comment section, and appreciate all of you for rocking and rolling with us here on the 49ers Report and making today's show part of your day.